Hey people, Mike Martins here with the Mike Martins channel. Thanks for liking, joining, subscribing, and being part of the channel and all that jazz. Well, there's a lot of action going on right now, and with finances and people and delinquencies and insolvencies and all that stuff. The other day we posted something on Business News in our community section here, where we basically posted nearly half of Canadians being worse off financially than a year ago, and it says survey. Someone politely emailed me and asked me if I could maybe do a follow-up on this because I haven't did an insolvency video in a good while now. So let's take a look at what's happening now. Let's take a look at why it's happening now. And let's also take a look at what we've been saying and what we've been foretelling here on the channel all these years. Here you go, guys. So this is the article that I basically clipped off and put it there in our community section to see what kind of a response we'd get. But I'm getting emails from people and it's pretty grim. Nearly half of Canadians report being worse off financially than a year ago, says survey. And you know how we feel about surveys on here too, right? It's kind of, you know what, right? But the amount of response I got is incredible. Facing rising costs, high inflation, Canadians are increasingly concerned about their finances, according to a new survey of Nanos Research of Bloomberg News. There it is right there. You could follow the head article from there. But let's go back to what they're saying here in the Canadian news sector. The survey found that 47% of respondents felt their finances had worsened over the past year, which is the highest number ever recorded since Nanos began asking the question in a weekly poll in 2008. Well, remember what happened in 2008? Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK kind of had a little walkthrough and watched America take a dive, right? And get bail-ins and all this kind of BS that happened in America, right? So I think Canada wasn't affected as much, nor Australia or other countries, since they call it the GFC, right? The kicker is that Canadians survived the 2008 recession. They survived the pandemic and worried about their jobs. Chief data scientist Nik Nanos said that in an interview with CTV News, now we're in a post-pandemic period, and they are reporting they are worse off now than they ever have been in tracking Nanos has been doing. Only 13% of the survey's respondents said their finances had improved in the past year. Respondents were also pessimistic about the economy, with 64% expecting it to deteriorate over the next 6 months and just 9% anticipating improvement. Wow. 40% of respondents, meanwhile, expected home prices to fall over the next 6 months. According to Nanos, sentiment surrounding real estate has been declining since March, when the Bank of Canada began to hike interest rates. So it's kind of interesting. They're kind of following the same pattern that happened 4 years ago when they raised rates, right? The bright spot in the survey appeared to be job security. 13% of respondents were at least somewhat concerned about losing their job, which is about average for the weekly poll. Amid rising food costs, another recent survey found that nearly 20% of Canadians were reducing meal sizes, skipping meals to save money. So it goes on, and let's jump in to here in Bloomberg, and it states here that job security remains at about a historic averages, about 13%. We did cover that. There was another part here. Canadians are extremely pessimistic about the outlook of the economy, with 64% saying they expect it to deteriorate. We covered that already. Just to make sure we're covering all our dots and dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And how does it tie into housing? Very simply, Toronto saw 0 new single-family homes sold. Condo prices trimmed $30,000 in a month. That's Better Dwelling reporting. Better Dwelling has been doing a great job. Greater Toronto's new construction housing has seen a demand completely vaporize. Data Build GTA and Atlas Group show that construction sales fell 90 points in September, 90%. Prices are now falling, especially for condos, which saw a $30,000 drop in the month. The segment was mostly bought by investors, which have disappeared, helping inventory recover. So that's what's happening right now. And we were reporting on this, Better Dwelling was too, and we've been reporting that Canada would be in a recession without money laundering. And Canada's economy and GDP was propped up by foreign money. And the numbers shown laundering cash is now the difference between growth and recession in Canada. That's before the you-know-what. Take a look at that date there. Before the you-know-what, we were in serious trouble. And basically our governments were selling to the highest bidders, and whoever they could get in to come in foreignly, mainly mainland China to come in and buy up our real estate and leave most of it empty and just sit on it as investments. And that's basically created this deterioration in the middle class in Canada, forcing people into homelessness, forcing families and fentanyl problems, abuse problems, narcotics, all kinds of problems, drinking problems, and it just a wave and a wave and a wave. And Canadians have been hit pretty hard in the last just 12 years alone. It's been very hard for a lot that's happened, and the disenfranchising of the Canadian middle class. You would never imagine that the city in Canada I was born and raised in, I can no longer afford to live in it, or I can no longer afford to eat in it because it's just too damn expensive. Where the city I was born and raised in, so I'm just paraphrasing here, the city I was born and raised in Canada, I can no longer afford to live in. I educated myself in this city. I grew up in this city. I made friends in this city, but I could no longer live in this city because foreign investing has basically impoverished our middle class. And basically you see it here. So let's tie into what we were saying for the longest time. So I highlighted it here. Look at this one I did 2 years ago before the you-know-what. Property taxes set to skyrocket. City of Vancouver at risk of bankruptcy. More fines ahead. 2 years ago. It's more than 2 years, by the way. You look at the date, it's almost 3. Bankruptcies booming in Canada, people taking on too much debt to keep up with inflation 3 years ago. 375 Canadians a day went insolvent last year. Watch when we raise rates to curb inflation 2 years ago. Retailers closing in Canada and facing bankruptcy in 2020. It just keeps going on. Canadian proper living in Vancouver see bankruptcies jump almost 18%. Vancouver is unaffordable. 5 years ago. So, Canadians going bankrupt at a crazy pace. Insolvencies climb 9.2% in Canada. Canadians who can't pay their debts has economists worried. 102,023 consumer bankruptcies 2 years ago. Canadians going bankrupt. 46% of Canadians are $200 less away from financial insolvency. Anything else? No, we don't. So if you connect the dots and figure out what's going on and see how it's been happening for a long time now. So this is a problem that they tried to Band-Aid by pulling the trigger on the you-know-what to slow things down, and until they could try and figure out how to fix this economics, the only thing they could do is basically raise rates to curb against inflation. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. There's no hiding it, and that's one tool that economists did not use when trying to straighten out this economic mess we got ourselves into. Their credit card insolvencies are going through the roof. Bankruptcies are going through the roof. And people tell me, Mike, you got to talk solutions. We need to figure out how to fix this. I've been warning people forever for this. Like I've been on the front lines getting, dirt and thrown at me and eggs and rotten tomatoes thrown at me for so many years, threatened in the whole 9 yards. Warning people that they're taking on too much debt. They're taking on more, they're biting off more than I'm going to get a job, I got my education, I'm going to make, because Hill Dog in the States said if you have a college education, you make X amount more. Well, because you're working for the government now. You work for the government, and we discussed this many times. Government wages outstrip private sector wages. And that's a major problem, and more people turn to work for the government. And that's the problem we're having. We're becoming more and more government-dependent country for employment, and you have to qualify though. You have to meet the standards to work for the Canadian government, and that's the problem we're facing here. This is the problem that we're facing here in Canada. That we need more private sector. We need more moms and pops businesses like this, because I just paid my corporate tax return. I just filed my GST for the last cycle year. I just did everything, and I'm paying out, and what's it getting me back, right? Our healthcare is crumbling. Everything's falling apart. Insolvencies are skyrocketing. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better, right? So for solutions to the matter is, get a TDS calculator, total debt service ratio. You can find a free calculator online. What's my TDS? Calculate your TDS right now. Go find a TDS calculator. Put down what you pay for rent, what you pay for this, or what you pay for your mortgage, or what you pay for taxes, what you pay for phone, what you pay for food. Put that in. Put in your incomes. If you have a dual 3 incomes at your house, 2 incomes, you work 2 jobs, put your total incomes in. Find out what is left over at the end. And if you're in a negative position, right, if your TDS goes over 50% or 45, usually is the threshold to make sure you have enough money for food, then you will realize that you've overdone it. Or find ways, talk to consolidation, or maybe a consolidation loan to consolidate all your debts in one bill so you pay one interest debt payment instead of a bunch of revolving interests and credit cards and store cards and gas cards, and just pay one interest rate. That's one way of getting it if your credit score is high enough. If it's unsecured, it might not go through, but if it's a secured a loan, it will go through, depending on how much equity you have in your home. And equity is getting wiped out as we speak. So when you start connecting the dots, it's a tsunami on all fronts. It's an economic tsunami on all fronts, and we said that many times here on the channel. Anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Just leave your comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Mike Martins here. I have spoken.